podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Spanning the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is Subject Cinema's Avengers Endgame MCU Countdown.
I don't think this is a case of too many cooks spoiling the broth.
No.
Because this movie, I think, was possibly the most ambitious film in film history. It and its sequel coming out in 2 days is responsible for $1 billion of film work.
Wow.
Their total budget, the two of them, was $1 billion. And this only spent 370 of it, so think of that. All the rest of it's left for Endgame. Mm-hmm. Coming in on the Subject Cinema Avengers Endgame MCU Countdown today, I'm TC Kirkham.
I'm Kim Brown.
And we are talking the movie that started the big anticipation, Avengers Infinity War, the third Avengers team-up movie, except it is way more than an Avengers team-up movie.
It sure is.
There is, good Lord. There are people missing from this movie. Hawkeye is not in this film.
No.
And Ant-Man is not in this film.
No.
We will see why, begin to see why, in the next film we'll talk about tomorrow. But everybody else is here, plus Spider-Man, plus Black Panther, plus the Guardians of the Galaxy, plus practically everybody else.
Yep.
And it is...
Plus Doctor Strange, because he's not an Avenger at this point.
And it is kind of crazy.
And Bruce Banner, but not the Hulk, except for at the beginning.
Right. I can't even go on. I mean, this movie...
It all led up to this.
Ripped people to pop apart.
All of the other films, there have been things that have been leading up to this. Mm-hmm. Things that we as the audience knew about, and now we're at the point where all the players are on the chessboard.
Right. It is the 19th? Right? 6, 12, 18. 19th movie in the cinematic universe. And all of it has led up to this since the beginning of the end of Phase 2, which was Ant-Man. So we had Ant-Man, Captain America: Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, and Black Panther all combining, leading into
but
this.
Even all the way back to the Avengers.
Right, but it's more so those films that are directly impacting here. Thanos is about to march through the universe, intending to kill half the people who live throughout the universe, using the Infinity Gauntlet. Mm-hmm. Now, rather than get into this at the beginning, because I have to admit, when you hear my review, it's going to be a little bit different than what I'm going to have to say afterward. Mm-hmm. Because I was pissed off at the end of this film. It actually is much better than I gave it credit for at the beginning, because I was so ticked off at the end of this film, and I actually sat back and thought about it and changed my mind about it, and I've seen it twice since then, so I really have. Without further ado, let's talk about everything else in the back end. Let's flash back to just about a year ago, Subject Cinema number 605, original day and date April 29th, 2018, for our review of Avengers Infinity War.
The entire time I knew him, he only ever had one goal. To wipe out half the universe. If If he gets all the Infinity Stones, he can do it with the snap of his fingers. Just like that.
Tell me his name again.
Thanos.
We got one advantage. He's coming to us. We have what Thanos wants. So that's what we use.
Okay, kiddies, it's finally here. The movie that is the culmination of 18 huge films in the past 10 years, storylines that have been intertwined throughout most of them, and a lot more. All with the biggest baddie of the entire universe for right now. An all-star cast, we'll go through who they are later, in Marvel's Avengers Infinity War. Give us the rundown.
It all comes down to this. Avengers Infinity War is dealing with what we have been dealing with for the entirety of the Marvel Universe in one way or another. Going all the way back to the Avengers when we see this shadowy figure at the end credits where we all of us who were comic book fans went, this beep just got real.
We should also point out before we get started, does anybody want to get off? Anyway,
some of us got off it. Never mind.
We will not be giving spoilers.
No.
And we're not going to go. It's just going to be your standard review.
We will not give
spoilers. Take it away.
Yes. As I mentioned, the Infinity Stones have been brought up and seen in more than one of the Marvel films. The Infinity Stones are these stones that have dominion over certain properties, space, time, power, the mind, etc., so on and so forth. If you bring all of these stones together in what is in a device called the Infinity Gauntlet, you have the power to do everything. And I mean everything with a capital E. The problem is that the Infinity Stones have been sought out for a very long time by a figure known as Thanos, who is also known as the Mad Titan. That gives you an idea. We are not dealing with someone who is going to get all these stones together and go, let's make the universe a place full of sunshine and puppies. No. Thanos wants to decide who gets to live and who gets to die.
That's not quite right, but
how does that figure?
He wants to bring balance to the universe. He wants to bring
balance to the universe because he's decided the universe is out of balance.
Right, exactly. There you go. Okay.
Good for you.
That clear.
Yeah. Can I bring up someone who's referred to as the Mad Titan, may not have the best cognitive thinking in the entire world, but I digress. At this point when we come into the film, we come in right where we actually just left, at the end of Thor Ragnarok, where Thanos and who he refers to as his children, I don't know if they're actually offspring.
No, they're not. They're followers.
Because I don't want to think about that at all. Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive, Ebony Maw, and Cull Obsidian, because these all sound like nice people, attack the Asgardian ship, which has the entire population of Asgard on it, fleeing from their home world after what happened in Thor Ragnarok. No spoilers here, but anybody who thinks the ship makes it out all right, intact, and everybody's having coffee, you're wrong. Going forward, we have the battle going on between damn near all of Earth's heroes and people beyond Earth, people like the Guardians of the Galaxy, who now include teenage Groot. He's not little teeny, sweet, adorable Groot anymore. He's taller, surlier, and apparently uses...
Obsessed with video games.
And obsessed with a video game called Defender, which I haven't seen since...
the last time
the
Star
Reagan
Lord
era
was on Earth.
The Reagan era, maybe? The Avengers, the Guardians, everybody that they can find are all trying to band together to prevent Thanos from getting all of the Infinity Stones.
Well, I think we should say that Earth was unaware that it was going on until something happened in that first thing you mentioned to let the heroes on Earth know that Thanos is on his way. I'm going to tell you what it is, but it was something that happened.
The Avengers were clued in about the Infinity Stones in Age of Ultron.
Right, but they didn't know he was coming that soon.
No, they didn't know, and they knew someone was searching for the Infinity Stones. We find out that the someone who is searching for the Infinity Stones is the worst case scenario person who could be searching for the Infinity Stones, capital W, capital C, capital S. So we have these ongoing battles between Thanos' henchmen and the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers. We have people getting captured. We have people getting tortured. Certain hot people getting tortured. Not happy with that. And a lot of crazy, some of the most awesome fight scenes I have ever seen. And an ending that we will not say what the ending is.
No, I thought you were going to give a little bit more detail about the film, but if you're not going to,
it's not. Well, the thing, the really terrible thing is, you could try and boil this down as, it's a battle.
Could try.
You could try and be simplistic, which a lot of non-comic people will do, and be like, it's a battle of good and evil. It isn't, though. It's a battle of life versus non-life, and that is even worse, in my opinion.
All right, here we go. This is going to take a while. There are a ton of people in this film.
Sit down and get comfy.
Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, a.k.a. Tony Stark. Chris Hemsworth as Thor. Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, a.k.a. the Hulk. Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, a.k.a. Captain America. Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. Don Cheadle as Rhodey Rhodes. Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, a.k.a. Black Panther. Paul Bettany as Vision, Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch, Anthony Mackie as Falcon, Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, a.k.a. White Wolf, which is referred to for the first time in this film. Mm-hmm. Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Idris Elba as Heimdall, Peter Dinklage as Etri, Benedict Wong as Wong, Pom Klementieff, I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name, as Mantis, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Dave Bautista as Drax, Zoe Saldana as Gamora, Vin Diesel as the voice of Groot, Bradley Cooper as the voice of Rocket Raccoon, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, Josh Brolin as Thanos, and Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, a.k.a. Peter Quill, plus appearances by Benicio del Toro, and, of course, the obligatory Stan Lee cameo. Mm-hmm. So, this is truly, I'm going to say this from just references, I'm not trying to be Mr. Supermarketer here. This is truly the first true, probably, superhero epic. Mm-hmm. In the fact that this epic, as in epic scope, epic story, and the best and the worst part about it is, it's only the first half of the story. Mm-hmm. So, what'd you think? As if I didn't know from the meltdowns.
What a story. What an absolute amazing story. There are parts that are really funny. There are parts that are laugh out loud, hilariously funny. And there are parts that are exciting. And there are parts that are beautifully romantic for those of us who ship people. And I totally ship people. I don't care. If you don't like it,
She's
fight
talking
me.
About Wanda and Vision, by the way. Just to be out there.
I totally ship Wanda and Vision.
Which has been going on in the comics since the 70s. So.
Yeah, I don't care. I ship a few other people too, and I will fight people if they tell me I can't. But when it gets serious, I mean serious, we're talking serious as a effing heart attack. I won't give away anything about the end, other than the fact that I will say this. I won't call this a spoiler. You can.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It's more simply because I love you guys. If you are a person who cries easily,
yeah.
Usually when people start something like that, if you're a person who cries easily, you usually hear bring a tissue or a towel. I'm not even going to tell you that. Bring a sponge. Bring a sponge and a bucket.
A large sponge.
Bring a large sponge. Put it in your lap.
Let's put it this way. I'm going to be totally honest, and she's going to get pissed at me. She had the biggest meltdown she's had. This is the third biggest meltdown she's ever had in a public theater. The biggest was March of the Penguins, and the second biggest was The Last Jedi. So we're going to be, and she did most of that at home. So it's like, this was a major issue at the end of the film, or near the end. Actually, from about halfway through to the end of the film.
There's a certain point. There's a certain
point.
There's
2 or 3 segments different.
There's a very specific point where it started, and by the end of this film, I had my hands pressed up against my mouth, because if I didn't, I would have started to scream.
Yeah.
And that's not being facetious or melodramatic or anything like that. And that wasn't for effect. That was because my heart was being ripped into 800 different directions.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
And thrown on the ground like so much red confetti.
I just realized something. Mm-hmm. I'm not done with the cast. Hang on a minute.
Okay.
In addition to those names I mentioned earlier, we also had brief appearances by Danai Gurira as Okie. Is that how you pronounce her name? Head of the security in Wakanda. Letitia Wright as T'Challa's sister Shuri, William Hurt as Thaddeus Ross, Kerry Condon as the voice of Friday, Stark's AI, Winston Duke as M'Baku, the leader of the Wakanda mountain tribe, the Jabari, Florence Kasumba as Ayo, a member of the Dora Milaje, Jacob Batalon for like 3 seconds as Peter Parker's best friend Ned, and Isabella Amara as his friend Sally, and Tiffany Espenson as his friend Cindy, and Ethan Dizon as his friend Tiny. There are 2 other cameos I'm not going to mention because they're in the post-credit sequence, and I think we'll keep those for secret.
Yeah.
And, sorry. Mm-hmm. The cast is all over the road. Playing the bad guys in Thanos' Children. Mm-hmm. Terry Notary as Cull Obsidian, Tom Von Lawler as Ebony Maw, Carrie Coon as Proxima Midnight, and man, she can kick ass. And Michael James Shaw as Corvus Glaive. They also did motion captures in addition to voicing them. Mm-hmm. Those were pretty spectacular. Yeah. Okay, I think that's finally everybody.
Seriously, that ending. Oh man, that ending. You mentioned the breakdown that I had at Last Jedi, and I will not deny that. No, I won't deny that. You have the person who's had your heart since you were 8 years old taken from you. Mm-hmm. You're going to wind up in the bathroom bawling your eyes out, too.
Yeah, but you didn't react that way when Han was killed in The Force Awakens. You were shocked, but you didn't react that way, and you've loved him as much.
I liked Han.
Okay, fine. Anyway, let's get off. I don't want to get
Luke
started.
Luke Skywalker was the first person that made me realize that you could love a man like that.
Okay,
and
so
I was
let's leave
8
that
years
at
old.
that so we can talk about Avengers. Okay, so...
All right, anyway.
Anyway.
But seriously,
let's get back to the storyline.
The end of this film is so wrenching. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's just wrenching. The reason that I said about... We were talking yesterday about Thanos and all that stuff like that. The reason that I think Thanos is so damn scary is because Thanos is unlike a lot of other villains. Because a lot of other villains, you know what their motivations are, and you know what Thanos' motivation is. But the thing that makes Thanos so much more dangerous than a lot of other people, in my opinion, he's a zealot. Okay. He believes what he's doing is the right thing. He believes all of this, well, the universe is out of balance because there's too many people in it, and I'm going to fix that once I gather all the Infinity Stones. Uh-huh. He's not doing this because he hates life. He's not doing it because he wants power. He actually said, when I'm done doing what I'm going to do, I'm going to rest. He's not talking about when I'm done doing what I'm doing, I'm going to take over and everyone's going to, I'm going to be the dictator of the universe or any crap like that. That's terrifying. Mm-hmm. That's even more terrifying than somebody who's going to be all, I'm going to rule the universe, muhaha. I think that's more horrifying because it's this whole idea that you're so blinded by your vision. Bad choice of words, I know. For what you think the universe should be like, that you're willing to do the absolute frigging unthinkable. I mean, you and I have talked about villains in the past, and I've mentioned to you, and I don't really know if you agree with me on this or not, because you've never really said, but I've always been like, nobody thinks they're a villain. Nobody wakes up and thinks, oh, I'm going to be the bad guy today. Nobody does that. Even the Nazis didn't do that. You said, you saw that movie, the decent one. And the whole point of that movie was that those were letters between, I'm sorry, who were those letters between?
Heinrich Himmler and his wife.
Yeah, okay. Heinrich Himmler, one of the most evil, wicked, terrible people in the universe.
He didn't think he was evil.
That's my point.
I know, that's why I said that, because I knew that's where you were going.
Nobody thinks what they're doing is evil or wrong or bad or whatever. The thing is, Thanos knows what he's doing is going to bring billions of people grief. But he's still like, I have to do it because I feel like in my heart it's right. That's frigging terrifying, I think. And I think Josh Brolin really pulls that off really, really well. Because a character like Thanos, you could do that in a big, arm-swinging, boisterous, loud way, and he doesn't do that. And I think that works really well. I think the whole cast is fantastic. I think the story is well-paced. It is a long story, but so is Ben-Hur, and I don't have a problem. I've never heard anybody bitch about how long that is.
I know.
Considering how much money you have to pay to go to the theater anymore, the longer it is, the better it is, as far as I'm concerned. It's a gripping story. It's an exciting story. It's a tragic story, and the end of it is like, holy crap! The next movie can't get here fast enough. At least that's how I feel. How do you feel?
Well, I think the applause at the end of the film from the audience, which doesn't happen very often anymore, was a pretty good indication that this movie hit the mark with however many people were in that theater, except maybe one or two. The woman that was asking about where Aquaman was, and which you mentioned to me earlier. And
she was saying something about Aquaman. I was like, wow.
Don't get me wrong. I really love this film. It's awesome. But I had a problem with the ending at first, and I was very angry and upset. But after thinking about it for a couple of days, I'm not angry and upset anymore.
Yay!
I was so upset on Friday night, not because of that, but because of what I was thinking, that I almost decided to walk away from everything. I was very upset because I felt that what I do as a journalist for Subject Cinema and for eCinemaOne gets sometimes in the way of my getting into the feeling of the movies. It doesn't feel as fun anymore sometimes. And while throughout this movie I felt it was fun, the first thing I started thinking of was like, well, what's the point when all these people have signed long contracts that guarantee them films in the future? Okay, so maybe that's just like...
We got in a bit of a tiff about that, and I came down...
We didn't really get in a tiff. I was just being honest, and I felt that you were not allowing me to be honest about it, but I had to think about where I was coming from.
Yeah, but I came down too harsh on you, and that wasn't right, and I'd like to apologize.
Well, you don't have to apologize. There was nothing. You didn't come down too harsh on me. I was just actually coming back from the grocery store this afternoon, thinking about the film, and realizing, this is really a lot of fun. I can't wait to see how they put things back together. So maybe I need to learn to shut that part of me off that I have trouble shutting it off.
See, I critique films too, just like you, and I shut it off. I turn,
It's hard though because you don't do. No, I don't want you to take offense at this.
No, you work way harder at this than I do.
You do 10% of the work.
No, I totally do.
And you don't keep up on the sites like I do. You don't keep up on the news like I do.
Nope.
Yeah, I have to follow everything.
You do.
And
you're really good at it.
It's important to me that I do that, but it's also important to me that I let go of that stuff and
be in the moment.
Be a fan. And we need to see it again so I can have that experience, hopefully. Because I didn't have it at the very end of the film this time.
Okay.
But I recognize that it is a brilliant ending.
You do realize
it is right out of the comic books. Yeah. And it's
actually worse in the comic books.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah. And I'm interested to see how they put this all back together now. So,
did anybody's performance really stick out with you?
Overall, I liked the entire thing. I have a few complaints.
Okay.
But nothing earth-shattering. Number one, I'm still not a fan of this version of Spider-Man. I like Tom Holland. He's funny as Spider-Man. The problem is, he's a little too comical for me. He's supposed to be sarcastic. Here, he's like almost a lapdog to Tony Stark. And you didn't see that. I did. It was like, you okay, Mr. Stark? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay, Mr. Stark. I'm like, really? Haven't we moved beyond that? That's not how a typical teenager acts these days.
No, most of them act like douchebags.
Secondly, and no surprise for our fans coming from me here, too much Star-Lord. I do not like this character. And it just...
Tells the praise.
I don't know. I wish there was less of him and more of the other stuff going on with the Guardians than when we saw. Anyway.
Chris Pratt, would you please pay him whatever it is you owe him?
Pratt.
No, I know.
I liked Pratt in the Jurassic Park movies.
Yeah, you did.
Jurassic World movies.
Yeah, actually.
I just don't like this character.
I know.
He grates on me so much, I just want to punch him every time he's on screen. If I knew Dave Bautista, I'd call him up and say, could you punch him for me, please? I also think that they're not using supporting characters enough in certain ways in the Guardians. They didn't really do all that much with Mantis, and I like her.
Yeah.
She was one of the best parts of Guardians Volume 2.
Well, she is important in that one scene.
She's important in the whole movie, but there isn't as much as I'd like to see. And, of course, the rest of the Guardians cast is awesome, and Bradley Cooper steals the show as Rocket. And it's fun when they finally get together with some of the Avengers and see what will transpire. So what's your score?
I give Avengers Infinity War an A. Very solid A.
I give it an A-. I loved it, and it was great. It's just that whole thing that took me, my own mind, that took me out of the moment. And that's my fault. It's not the movie's fault, and I'm not going to blame them for that. As if you didn't know, Avengers Infinity War is showing everywhere, in regular, in 3D, in 4D, probably in 5D, 6D, 7D, and 8D, somewhere out there in the galaxy, where the Guardians of the Galaxy roam with their old beatbox and 80s and 70s music. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, climb out from underneath the rock you've been living on and go to this theater and see it.
Definitely.
The snap heard across the universe. For weeks after, I would do this to her, and she'd give me the dirtiest look. Or I'd turn back to her and go, I don't feel so well, Mr. Stark. And I'd get the dirtiest look in
and then I'd bite him.
You would not bite me.
I'd think about it.
I was pissed off at the end of this movie because I thought it was a cop-out. Because we knew everybody would be back because of the contracts. But then when I sat back and thought about it, I realized that I had become too much of a jaded movie critic and too less of a fan. I didn't let myself lose myself in the movie.
No, you didn't.
And I was very...
Which I really want...
that was a big epiphany for me. And I've tried to change my way of looking at things since then.
Which I really wanted to say to you that night and say it in a calm, rational, adult way.
You did say it to me and I didn't listen. I mean, you said it to me and it kind of hurt my feelings and I thought about it and realized that you were right. It was not an
I could have said it a little bit less shrieky.
Yeah. Well, you did. We talked very calmly about it while we were waiting for our cab home. It was...
See, that's what you have to do. You have to put yourself in the universe of the movie. You have to think of
Yes, this coming from someone who sits there and whenever she's watching an old film, oh, hey, why don't you just pick up yourself? Oh.
But
you're losing yourself in the movie.
That's just you, and I'm joking for a second, But like for an example, I'll give you a great, not a great example, but it's just a me example. I've seen Psycho more times than I've had hot dinners, and when that shower curtain gets pulled back, I still jump. Mm-hmm. The scene in Jaws where we see Brucey for the first time, really see him. Mm-hmm. I jump and screech like a girl. I am a girl, but it's.
Oh, that made sense. Thank you.
You have to kind of almost picture yourself that you're sitting on a park bench watching everything unfold in front of you, and sometimes that can be scary. Sometimes that can be really, really frightening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can make you sick. Looking at you, M. Night Shyamalan, for the opening of Devil, because I'm just like, I'm going to throw up, I'm going to throw up, I'm going to throw up.
He was just a producer. He didn't direct that film.
Yeah, I know, but if anybody's seen Devil, you know what I'm talking about, and I couldn't deal. But I'm glad that you changed your mind, because I do think, and yes, like you said, that something else was going to happen, but you knew that.
Yeah.
You just had to forget it for a little while.
And now I'm just as anxious and can't wait for 2 days from now. So
because I got to be honest with you, babe, everybody else in the theater knew that too.
Yeah, I know. And some of them had the same reaction I had.
Yeah, and some of them had the same reaction I had.
I know.
More of them had the same reaction I had.
I know. Gasping, crying, joking, freaking out.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't joking. I was a mess.
Yeah, she was a mess.
It
wasn't The Last Jedi, but she was a mess.
No, nothing's going to be The Last Jedi.
Except maybe The Rise of Skywalker. We'll have to wait and see.
No, that might just be me walking out of the building and throwing myself under a car.
No, you're not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that. Calm down, folks. But this film, there are moments of humor in this film.
Oh, yeah.
But for the most part, it is a straight-on action film, and it is downright terrifying when you think about the idea of what Thanos does and why Thanos does it. Because in the comics, he had a completely different motivation. That is a bit...
No, it's not completely different. No. We haven't gotten to that yet, but some people say that might be addressed in Endgame.
Really?
Yeah. His fascination with death. The goddess.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Just spoiler alert.
Yeah.
The comics...
We're not sure. It's just,
in the comics, Thanos is in love with death. The thing is, in the Marvel Comics universe, death is not just an abstract concept or the lack of life or whatever. Death actually has a physical form, usually depicted as a very shapely woman with a skull for a head. Okay. I'm not knocking anybody's, whatever. People describe death or what death looks like in every... you have everything from Ingmar Bergman to the Sandman with different descriptions of death and stuff like that. But the idea that somebody is in love with death and their idea of showing death, I love you so much, I've killed half the universe for you. You couldn't just say it with flowers? So you'd think that would make death upset because that's more work, but... What do I know?
Paperwork. Everyone to do all
but
that. But
when you think about the way they did it in the series in the comics is interesting. The way they did it in the movie is actually, I think it's more terrifying because in the movie Thanos he's a zealot, and that's even more dangerous sometimes than the hand-rubbing Lex Luthor, moo-ha-ha, I want to control the world and kill Superman type.
Yeah.
Because zealots...
Forgive us for continuing to bring up DC characters.
I can't think of anybody in the Marvel universe that is that... Well, maybe Dr. Doom.
Right.
Well, yeah, Dr. Doom's thing is, I want to rule everything and kill Reed Richards. Or show Reed Richards up or whatever. Right. Thanos believes he's right.
Yeah, he does.
He is like the worst form of you hear about all these things on the news about people that commit these terrible acts of terrorism for whatever reason, and they believe in their heart that they're right.
Yep.
And that makes them really frightening.
Yep, it does.
And that's what Thanos is, Also, the one thing that I get confused about, and I got confused about after the movie, and I think the producers or the directors or somebody brought it up, that when Thanos does the snap with the Infinity Gauntlet and his desire is to wipe out half of the population of the universe, right?
Right.
Okay. So we see all these people just fading away to dust, so on and so forth. Half of the sentient population, blah, 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 does that include animals that aren't like Rocket? Like a cow. Is a cow a sentient being? Is a tree a sentient being that's not up and walking around and going, I am Groot, because we saw what happened with that. But, does that count? Because if that counts, then you've wiped out half of that, and now people are going to die from famine.
I don't think he was talking. I think it's just people.
Okay, I don't know. Anybody out there, any Marvel fans? You actually brought up a really good point, and I never did get an answer. So anybody out there who wants to chime in on this, let us know. You brought up a really good question to me that I honestly didn't have an answer for. The idea that when Thanos did the snap, was there a chance? Because he doesn't know who's going to get dusted. It was just like a luck of the draw kind of thing. Was there a chance that he could have been destroyed as well and still did it anyway because he felt that it was the right thing to do? What would have happened if he had did that and all of a sudden he started to fade away and the Infinity Gauntlet went clunk and just hit the ground, And that makes it even scarier, the idea that you might actually be sentencing yourself to death and you do it anyway because you're on this whole, the universe is too populated and I should be the one to decide who lives or dies by a totally random thing kick. It's really, really scary when you think about it. And I don't know if that could have happened or if the gauntlet would have protected him or whatever.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I think it's possible. I also think this movie proves beyond a shadow of a doubt another TC theory.
Here it comes. Oh, I know what it is already.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Star-Lord is an a-hole.
No.
Oh.
Star-Lord is an idiot. We're not going to go there anymore other than the fact that he blew everything. They were this close to winning, and he blew everything. Anyway.
Chris Pratt, could you please pay him whatever money you owe him?
It isn't Chris. It's the character.
I know. Chris, I'm just teasing. We like you, but he really hates your character.
I really hate that character.
No
sugar. One more day.
No sugar, Sherlock.
Tomorrow, on our countdown here, we are going to go post-snap, or are we? It is 2018's Ant-Man and the Wasp from the summer. It's the first post-Infinity War film, and the next to the last one. And don't forget Friday, April 26th, we will bring you the final review we have not reviewed yet, Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson. And Friday night when we get home, probably somewhere around 11 o'clock, we will bring you our impressions of Avengers Endgame after taking it in at the Carasotis Showplace Icon, our first visit to this theater, and we can't wait to see it.
I will apologize in advance because my voice will probably be very bad that night because
none of everything comes back to normal. And you'll be happy.
When have you known me not to happy cry?
Well, okay.
See, my problem is I am not a pretty crier.
No.
I cry when I'm happy, I cry when I'm sad, and neither way is it an attractive thing. So if my voice sounds like I swallowed a cheese grater, that's probably why.
Okay. So, until tomorrow, and just one official day before the previews and 2 days before Avengers Endgame premieres, I'm T.C. Kirkham.
I'm Kim Brown.
For Subject Cinema's Avengers Endgame MCU Countdown. We will see you tomorrow.
Bye.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.